Welcome to Stageworthy. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host of this podcast. Stageworthy is a podcast about creativity and the performing arts. If you enjoy the show, please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a review. Reviews and ratings help new people to find the show. And if you want to keep up with what's going on with Stageworthy and my other projects, you can subscribe to my newsletter at philrickaby.com/subscribe. If you want to leave a tip for the show, you can drop some change in the virtual tip jar. I will put a link to that in the show notes. I also have a Patreon in support of the show. Stageworthy is a one-person operation, so not only do I arrange the guests, I also edit the show, promote it, and I even created the music. I also shoulder all of the financial responsibilities for keeping the show going, so your support would mean the world. For a monthly subscription of just $5, I will take you behind the scenes on the podcast, do regular Q&A sessions, and even present regular interactive conversations for subscribers. You can find the Patreon at patreon.com/stageworthypod. Remember, you can find Stageworthy on Twitter and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website with the archive of all the episodes at stageworthypodcast.com. And if you want to drop me a line, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby. And as I mentioned, my website is philrickaby.com. My guest this week is the legendary Bruce Dow. Bruce has been seen on stages in Canada and the US, from the Stratford Festival to Broadway, from stage to film to TV. In addition to being an actor, Bruce is a director, coach, as well as a composer, lyricist, and librettist. Here's our conversation. Where are you currently?
Emotionally or physically?
Let's go with physically. Physically.
Okay. Geographically, I am in the north end of Toronto or the south end of North York. So I'm in the greater Toronto area, and have been for a while.
I figured it's a good idea to check, because you do work in many places. Have you been in the greater Toronto area through most of the pandemic, or have you been hopping around?
Basically, I was in New York. We were 10 days from opening Diana the musical on Broadway, and we shut down and thought it was going to be like 2 weeks break. And I came back to Toronto to stay with my then best friend roommates. We're still best friends, but we're no longer roommates. So I have sort of been in the GTA for most of that, except for when we flew to New York to do they put us in a giant COVID bubble to do the recording of Diana and to shoot the show for Netflix. So,
right.
But basically Toronto, I'm a bit of an introvert naturally. I'm extroverted on stage, but as a person introvert, so I've just been very happy to hide at home for this whole thing.
I have a whole episode where I got a bunch of introverted actors together to talk about some stuff. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But so you were working on Diana on Broadway and expecting to open when everything happened.
Yeah.
And of course, I remember thinking, 2 weeks, it's not going to be long. And then, here we are.
I was thinking that too, but I also remember when we had the SARS situation in Toronto, and Toronto shut down for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it took 2 years for Toronto theaters to recover from that 2-week shutdown.
Yeah.
So I sort of was going, if this isn't 2 weeks, then we could be into sight. But who had any idea it would be this? You read about Shakespeare and the theaters closing down for the play, but you don't imagine it as a real thing that will happen in your lifetime.
No, you don't. And it becomes a thing where, I remember like maybe a month into the pandemic seeing posts from people who are theater people being like, well, that's it. Theater's over. This is it forever. Online forever. And I was like, theaters survived this kind of thing before.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, my parents weren't born for the Spanish flu, which was 1912, I think, somewhere around then. They came along in the 1920s, but they had the record of it. This is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all this is a I mean, it's catastrophic. Yes, we can't deny that, and I think recovery will be much longer than anyone wants to think it will be. Um, but this is nothing new. There
Yeah.
is nothing new under the sun ever. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 1918 flu, I mean, a lot of people were sort of like revisiting it at the
18.
beginning of the
Yeah.
pandemic because it's one of those things that we we don't it's not it's sort of like lost to record because it was like not on the front pages of the
Right.
newspapers, and so it was sort of buried, and so it wasn't like everybody panicking about it. Well, whereas this was front page news for ages.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, and I mean, it's funny as well. It's beautiful all the social change that is happening now, but at the same time, I talk to students who are like, "This is so exciting and it's earth shattering and never happened before," and I'm like, I was raised in the 60s and 70s when it all happened
Mm,
before.
yeah,
And it was an incomplete movement at that time, and we're still struggling through it. But
yeah.
there is nothing new under the sun.
No, exactly, exactly. I really feel for the kids who are in school right now, who are trying to
Oh,
figure out both how to do theater school in this, but also uncertain about what the landscape is going to look like when they get out into the world.
I'm. I hope none of them are listening. And yet I hope they are. But yeah, it's a tragedy to. I have friends who just graduated, students, and they're now friends who have just graduated just before this all hit, and they're going. I finished my schooling. I want to start my career. There is no industry, and
Mm,
it's an absurd dance for those who are in school now, training to do something for which there is no industry.
yeah.
Um, Not saying there never will be, but and it, like you said, it is exciting that we are exploring new online ways of communicating live performance. I've got a Valentine's Day cabaret that I'm doing online, and
Mm.
it's weird. I had huge emotional meltdowns over that, going, "Oh my God, what is this thing?" Um, but yeah, no, for students in theater school, uh, it just must be surreal.
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
It's how do you even compute it? Certainly, like this thing that you want to do that you're studying, and you don't know what it's going to look like, and even your teachers who you kind of look to be like, what's the landscape look like when we get out of here? Right now they can't tell you.
We have no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, those of us who came to professional age in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, um, who are now the teachers, are going, that world has died and
Mm,
changed so quickly
mm.
that where are we now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, working on your Valentine's cabaret, which is being presented digitally, how did that come about, and what's been the process of putting that together?
Um, it's, it sort of came about by accident. Um, uh, it's Cabaret Mark Selby, who's a TV producer and piano man. We've kind of done this cabaret for years in various forms, and honestly, we were both sitting at home going, "There's nothing to do, and everybody's at home, and here comes Valentine's Day, and even though we're sorta opening, we're still sorta stuck at home." And I think just sidebar to that, I think there's a new awareness of societally of people who cannot gather, people who, for their stage in life or for mobility issues, accessibility issues, are simply not able to gather, whom we haven't been aware of before, but we have been able to include in digital formats. Um, then we're also dealing with the simple accessibility: are things open or not? And then there's people like myself who, frankly, are I'm not in a rush to go sit in a crowd of strangers, even if I know we're all vaccinated. Um,
Mm,
I have my own sort of weirdly developed social anxiety about that. So anyway, we're just sitting at home going, what can we do? And we thought, well, let's pull this thing out. Let's throw it on film and let's share it with some theater companies and some community groups and let them have access to it.
mm.
Anybody listening, it's on my Facebook page, whatever. Um, but or there's a couple other places to check it out. But it really was just kind of it's not about making money. It's just about sort of going, here's a little gift. This is
Mm,
something we do, and hopefully you can enjoy it. I found it very interesting when when everything shut down and we started going online, that I saw two things happen. One was people who were excited about performing and excited about doing it in a new format, and there was sort of a very healthy approach to online performance. Um, there was the other side that was the simple terror of isolation and the panic for attention and the desperation in performance online.
mm,
And well, talk about what I'm doing now, but which is sort of adjacent related, but to me that really shone a spotlight on uh, toxic elements in our business, of our relationships as actors to, as people to what we do,
mm,
and then as what we do to the profession itself.
mm.
Um, so I'm hoping this thing just came out of everybody's stuck at home for Valentine's Day. Why don't we just throw it up there, and if anybody wants to watch, great. You know, just
Yeah.
a little wave from the distance through a camera.
There's this interesting thing about quote unquote digital theater, and I keep encountering some people who they're just like, well, if it's digital, it's not theater, and they get very very upset and very angry about the
Right,
possibility.
right.
I'm sitting here sort of in the same way as you were describing about how, in many ways, broadcasting a show digitally, however you do it, opens it up for people who can't get to the theater, whether it's they have a disability, or they're older, they have mobility issues, or even because it's a digital ticket, maybe it doesn't cost as much, financial burdens as well.
Yeah,
And also, like, the ability to see things where you're not proximity to. Like, there have been so many times I've heard about a show playing in Edmonton or in Halifax, and I've thought I would love to be able to see that, but I'm not in a position to be able to travel there. It'd be great to be able to share
oh,
that stuff too.
one of the company, I think it's Musical Stage Company, has been offering, we're going to London to see a show and it's online,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we're going to New York to see a show and it's online. And um, they weren't my hashtags, but I jumped on accessibility for all
Mm-hmm.
and cabaret for all, and sort of beyond pay what you can, in terms of pay what you can, but some situations where we did a show for Christmas and it was just by donation.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch it for free, great. If you wanted to give a donation, sure, cool.
Yeah,
Um, but I think these are hugely important things. And no, is it literally theater? No, but is there I mean, is there any shame in a new mode of performance? I'm sure people freaked out when Shakespeare moved indoors to the
sure.
Blackfriars. They, oh, this is lit by candlelight. It's not lit by the sun. It's no longer a theater. I mean,
Yeah,
life, my mom used to say, life takes you by the tail and swings. So just
yeah.
go with it and see where you end up. Yeah,
I feel like there's
yeah.
all these possibilities that just sort of get opened up by digital, and I just feel like it doesn't have to be what some people are afraid of, and that is that, oh, if we put it on film, it's the death of theater. Some people sort of have this idea that, like, if we put it out, if we put it on film or we put it on digital, that nobody's going to ever see it again because they've quote unquote seen it. And yet, people will buy a CD, or they'll listen to whatever
Yeah,
music on Spotify. And just because they've heard it there doesn't mean that they don't then want to see it live. It doesn't preclude them from doing
no.
that.
I, oh, I had a great idea when you say that. No, there's a, oh, totally lost my train of thought. Because I
That's all
got,
right.
you said CD, and I'm going, you're showing your age, because I have a whole box full of CDs.
I almost showed my age even further. I almost said record, okay?
Oh my God, brilliant, brilliant. Um, Where did you start with that though? It was. I mean, online is. Oh, okay. No, this is it. It's the absolutism that's come into the conversation
Mm-hmm.
that people are not able to hold. Right now, we're not able to hold two conflicting ideas as
Yeah.
equally existing in tension.
Mm-hmm.
You can just because something exists in a digital medium does not mean that theater no longer exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it comes out in the same idea that if somebody wants more rights, i.e., basic human rights,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take something away from me. No, it's not. The world is not a pie.
Mm-hmm.
Giving somebody a slice does not make your slice smaller.
Yeah.
It's right now we're in a state of just absolutism in our thinking,
Mm-hmm.
whereas yes, something can be healthy for one and unhealthy for another, and they are not mutually exclusive, and they are not. There is not a value system to judge one as better than the other. They are both just there, and
Yeah.
that's how the world is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. I think about all of the shows that I've seen,
but it's fear. Sorry, it's just Japanese. It's
yeah.
all based in fear. What
Yes.
I
Yes.
know is gone. Oh, I can't accept anything new. Well, I
Mm.
don't want to accept anything new either, but at the same time, it's just fear.
I just think there's so many more possibilities because, I mean, let's face it. If we know people who are a little younger, I know people who've watched shows that were illegally filmed on Broadway and they've seen them on YouTube before they got taken down. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to, like, if they have the chance, they're not going to go and see the show because they
No.
realize that what they saw is not the full experience. And so,
Yeah.
like, putting stuff on digital and like doing like a live stream, which is easier than people think from a live theater, by the way, and
Totally.
is just something that like we can do and open ourselves up. I mean, we're complaining all the time about where our audience is going. Well, let's expand the audience.
The Metropolitan Opera did not close because they started showing operas in the movie theaters on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday afternoons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's just a thing.
Yeah.
It's,
Absolutely.
yeah. No, it's, I think it's a very exciting time. And, but again, it's just being able to, but at the same time, uh, it's not-for-profit theaters will be able to open somewhat because they can have a 50% audience
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and still with public support be able to make their bottom line. uh, Commercial theater, a lot of it you simply cannot afford to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
at 50%. I have friends waiting to start rehearsals for the Harry Potter at the Mirvishes,
Mm-hmm.
and you know even including what happened with the closing of Come From Away. It's
Yeah.
you, you can't afford to keep a theater open
No.
at 50% when that is your full source.
Yeah.
Stratford has announced their full season, and they are a not-for-profit company, but they
Yeah.
function largely. Don't quote me, Stratford, but as in a commercial format. They are
Mm-hmm.
so dependent on audience
Yeah.
for simply what they're presenting that and they don't get the government funding that they proportionately need for what they want to do. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's scary is we don't know.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing is we have this, it's hard enough to decide to try to figure out what's going to happen with a show,
Hmm.
than to also have to worry about whether or not you're actually going to be able to perform it, or is there suddenly going to be a restriction on the number of people that can be in the building.
Right.
And I have this thing. I remember in the fall they were, some shows were open and they were opening with like 50%. And then all of a sudden there was the no more restrictions. And they were like, we can do full house. And I thought, well, now I don't feel like I can go because I don't know. And this is because I feel like we need to ease into this, right? Like we've spent, it'll be, 2 years around the time this comes out. We spent
Yeah.
2 years avoiding people.
Yeah.
And now I'm supposed to sit in a packed theater shoulder to shoulder with them as people, as they always do when the lights go down, cough around me.
That's exactly how it's what I salute Broadway for doing in saying everybody has to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I think it's I wish we could get this part of the question into the vaccine anti-vax conversation.
Mm.
Simply to say it's not about the reason you can't go to a restaurant unvaccinated is not because somebody's forcing you to be vaccinated. It's because the restaurant doesn't want the liability of someone becoming sick
Mm-hmm.
while you are there, you becoming sick while you are there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's avoidance of a lawsuit. It's where it's going to succeed is in private business.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
getting people that is just going, look, you want to come in my store, yeah, I got to see that you're vaccinated. I'm
Well,
not
this is
gonna.
the thing is for so long, if you want to go to a store or you want to go to a mall, it was like no shoes, no shirt, no service, right? Like this is not really that different.
No,
It's a quote unquote restriction, but it's basically the store the business gets to say, okay, you don't meet this requirement, you can't come in.
exactly, exactly. And I mean, another side of the conversation too is aging myself. I remember when seatbelts came in as mandatory,
Well, yeah. Yeah,
and
there
it
were
was like,
lots of people of my dad's generation who were like, "Oh, they're death harnesses. It's better to be thrown
and
clear."
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm not gonna have anybody tell me what I have to do in my car.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny and sad with all the truckers going. There are so many safety regulations for
Mhm.
truckers.
Right.
They are told when they have to sleep, how long they're allowed to drive, all of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
That you know, and we all had to get rubella and polio to go to school. We still
Yes,
do.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
know.
There's a lot
Anyway,
of
that's a whole
ridiculousness
nother.
about the whole thing.
But
Yeah.
but I
I
think
mean,
getting back to what you were saying before is I think this is opening up. I know people who are planning to do shows and to have live audiences and to have a digital format for the same
yeah.
performance,
Yeah.
which
That
is great.
that really excites me because it's the thing I remember in was it was July of 2020 when the filmed version of Hamilton ended up on Disney Plus. And I
Hmm.
watched that and I was like, because I'd seen the show live and this was like, oh, this is sort of live because I get to hear the audience, but I can see closer, I can see more. But also like just hearing the audience was like, oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
kind of what it's like to be in the room. And
Hmm.
it's similar to like a film performance like that, just sort of like allows you to get a sense of what it's like in the room.
Well, and I mean that's been a hard part of doing this Valentine's cabaret is we have
Yeah.
no audience. So it's just me singing into the dark, hoping
Yeah.
somewhere somebody has a reaction. I also know that affected the response to Diana. I mean,
Sure.
we could have a long talk about what that means, but that was a whole keg of worms. But regardless, I remember performing the show live, and the
Mm,
audiences went nuts for it. But that's
yeah.
not present in the digital version.
And that's
So
so
you're sort of
hard
left
to
with
miss
it's a
that
different
piece of the
riff.
puzzle. That's so difficult because there's something about like
Oh yeah.
anytime we've seen a filmed version of a stage production and like understanding like, oh yes, this is a really good piece, but then hearing how the audience reacts to it. Say for example, the filmed version of Sweeney Todd and realizing how the song Joanna brings down the house and that sort of thing. You wouldn't get that if you didn't have the audience in the room.
No, I don't know where I came across it, but good old damn Yankees. And there's Gwen
Yeah.
Verdon selling her soul and whatever Lola wants, and she finishes it, and then it kind of fades into the next scene, and you go, oh, wah
Yeah.
wah, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's somewhere new it could all go in a combination
Mhm.
of things.
Yeah.
Um, but again, people have to make a living, and how do we pay people to do it?
Well,
But
I mean, I do think that digital aspect does open a stream of revenue that we didn't have before. Like a digital
totally.
ticket is an opportunity, you know?
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Now you
Hmm.
mentioned Diana. You mentioned like this filmed version of Diana, which is not
Right.
what you would want it to do. You've been doing previews for the show when it closed down, or
We had done, yeah, we were finishing our previews. The show was basically frozen,
right,
and we were just running it to open. I think we started seeing we were going to get critics the next week.
right.
So yeah.
So filming it with no audience, that must have been a strange experience to have to go from knowing that show with an audience to presenting it and not having an audience.
Completely. First of all, we did they the good thing was we did a number of runs of the show. We filmed a number of complete run throughs. So there was a flow and an energy to it,
Mm.
that we were able to recapture. But at the same time, all the seats in the orchestra had been torn out, and the theater was full of 9 cameras blinking
Oh.
at you.
Mm.
And there were no vaccines at the time, but we were in high COVID protocol.
Sure.
So everybody had been tested and isolated and retested and re-isolated. And when we gathered, eventually only actors could take off their masks when on stage. They had to put masks back on backstage. And the
Hmm.
poor dressers, and that show, if you watch it, is nothing but costume changes.
Oh my
Um,
god.
the poor dressers were in full PPE, gowns, gloves,
Oh my god.
masks, and plastic shields, trying to dress the show. I
Of
mean,
course, because we knew nothing about the virus at that point.
nothing at all. Nothing at all. It was just it we you do, they kept us in a hotel. We had to isolate in the hotel as soon as we got back. Everybody to their own private room. Uh, our meals would be delivered. You would get your meal and you would sanitize your cutlery before eating your meal.
Mm.
You know, I mean, everything was sanitized before, but you'd
Yeah.
do it again. Um, Yeah, but filming the show was it was great to be with the people. It was great
Mm.
to, you know, but again, also all the singing was live, but because it was going to be remixed later, there was sort of it was basically a rhythm section
Hmm.
accompaniment. It didn't feel the same. There's
No.
no way it
Mm.
felt the same.
Mm.
And it was funny. I didn't go back for it for the reopening. A lot of personal reasons and stuff. Nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with any disagreement or anything like that. Just I didn't go back. Um, but uh, but they were getting an audience. They were getting. It was
Mm.
turning into a bit of a cult favorite that people had to see, and
Right.
people going to see it were going, okay, I get this now. It's a sassy attitude. I mean, it's two guys from New Jersey writing what they feel about Princess Diana. So in the room, you got the feel for it, and people were really catching on. And then Omicron started, and it just
Right.
couldn't couldn't go.
Yeah.
You know,
So that show closed down entirely. Is it one of the casualties on Broadway right now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's and uh, I don't know, but I think there may be more casualties. I'm not sure before we get out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's sad. I mean,
February
part
hasn't
of
been as bleak as I was afraid, but yeah.
no, no, but it's. I know. I remember like when the first shows were opening on Broadway and seeing video of like that first performance of Hadestown as the cast came out and
Oh,
the audience jumped to their feet. I was a little verklempt, but I was also like, look at all those people packed in so close together. I don't know how I feel about this.
I was watching other movies, like just general movies on TV, and you'd see a
Yeah.
crowd scene, and I'd go, I feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know, you
Yes.
see it, something, and it's shot in a mall, and people are walking around a mall, and I'm starting having anxiety and agita just seeing a crowd.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because I mean, when we came back, I came back to Toronto and moved back in with my roommate, and another roommate moved in with us, and we were walking in and washing our vegetables and washing our
Yes.
groceries and wearing our masks, and you know, it was it yeah, tensions were
Yeah.
high about, did you wash this? Can I touch it? You
Yes.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, there's still, I mean, it's funny watching, as I've been, in my day job, I'm one of the people that can go into the office, and I like going into the office. It gets me out of my
Oh,
small
it's
apartment.
great.
Um, but it's been interesting watching how say, for example, the subway gets more populated. And when I was first going into the office, if I took the subway, there were very few people and everybody wore their masks, right?
Right.
Except occasionally there'd be like one person who had their mask on their chin or under their nose or whatever. And you just change
Right.
cars or whatever. Now there's more people and more people not wearing their mask properly. And you sort of are like, do I get off? Do I wait for the next train? What do I do here? It's just,
Can
I
we
can.
just I mean, it is weird to have something over your face, but nurses and doctors do it 24 hours a day.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you not notice that your mask is now below your nostrils?
Yeah.
Is that of no concern to you? I mean, and also I just want to run around screaming at the world. There's a little metal bendy thing you can pinch that will hold it on
Yes.
your
Yeah.
nose.
No,
I've
I
seen so
have the
many of them
same
with the
thing.
sort of
I
yeah,
just I just want to say, like,
yeah,
I see people and I like, you just like, at this point, how can you not know?
yeah. How can you not know?
Yeah.
And do you not care about
Yeah.
not only well, I mean, it's all about us right now. It's all about my needs and how I feel and my safety and my rights and my stuff. It's not about caring about your neighbor. It's not about but do you not care about not only your health, but the health of your grandma at home,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the health of your brother or sister who may have some respiratory immunocompromisation,
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
even just, Aunt Sally gets bad bronchitis. Well, maybe don't invite her to the party. Or if you
Yeah.
do, wear your mask.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's, you know,
Yeah.
I'm turning
No, I
into my,
know. Again, we can. The soapbox is like right here. I could get up
it's
on it. I
right
could
here.
just
I'm
like I
hopping
could,
up and down.
just
Yeah.
stand on it. I could go, but
Yeah.
that's a different podcast.
Well, it's also this could be over with.
Oh, I
If
know.
we all freaking stayed home
I
for
know.
10 days,
I
it
know.
would be gone.
Yeah. No, I know. And I had that feeling like at the beginning, it was like, if we all just do this thing, everything will be fine. And then there were too many exemptions and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And it just like, ultimately, we're just
And
like still stalled.
I have beloved anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers in my family, and it's just
Yeah.
okay. You
Hmm.
know, I,
Yeah.
you still love them, even though you want to slap them with a wet fish. Come on,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
snap out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to
Yeah.
take a second and sort of direct the conversation a little
Sure.
bit towards. I always like to talk to people about their theater origin stories, and so for
Oh.
you, as somebody who was born in Seattle, who found
Hmm.
their way, I think, to Vancouver,
Yeah.
what was it that drew you, that started you on the path to theater, and what was that inciting incident? Let's say.
Um, it's a really glamorous story. I when I was working at Stratford, so many actors you would talk to would say, "Well, I saw so and so in their great production of Hamlet, and that made me want to be an actor." For me, it was watching Batman on television in the '60s, uh, and well, maybe more Batgirl. I'm not sure,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
but watching that, and when my mom explained that Batman wasn't really Batman, but was a man pretending to be him. And I thought, you can do this for a living? That blew my mind. And then I also discovered that um, I grew up in a very loving, caring, smart bunch of people, but very strong personalities, and I was the oddball. Um, but I found I could fit in when I performed. And
Mm,
so for me, making the connection that, oh, people like me when I do this,
hmm.
and I can do this as a living. Um, I was very young when I decided
Mm,
I want to be an actor, and I I made that connect. And I got to be honest, it's something I'm looking at now because right now I'm studying multicultural psychotherapy and multicultural spiritual care. Bit of a career shift change thing going on. But it wasn't a hugely healthy connection to the industry.
mm,
Um, but it also was a very passionate connection. And then I met the other theater weirdos and went,
Mm.
oh, I'm not the only misfit toy on the island. Um, and and also it was a way of learning to understand. I mean, the initial was Batman's cool, well, Batgirl's cool, and seriously, kicking people in those little 2-inch kitten heels, that was the hottest thing in the world. Um, that's fun. I can do that. Oh, performing, people like me when I do it. That's great. And then it deepens, and you go into, I get to explore what other people's lives experiences are, aspects of the human condition I would never come in contact with anywhere else. Um, and then how to do that with respect and intention and
Mm.
presence. And so yeah, that's what Batman and Need for Acceptance and Love drew me in.
Do you think that your introverted aspect uh, played a part in sort of like going towards, oh, when I perform there, that people like that?
Huge bit. And what it
Mm.
also meant is that I could express things that I could not express at home.
Hmm.
I could be vulnerable. I could be brave. I could be um, I could experience everything in the world when I was somebody else.
Hmm.
And I knew I had that inside me, and finding a character through which I can express this um, was just huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was much later in life. I played the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, and just fell in love with him for how terrified and brave he was.
Hmm.
Because you can't. It's the first time, late in life, learning that bravery does not exist without fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have this image of bravery as strength and toxic masculinity, and this is what it is to be brave. You're not brave if you're not afraid.
Yeah.
You're just
Yeah.
loud, you know, and obnoxious. That
Yeah.
just being loud is not being brave. You're
Yeah.
only brave when you're going, I'm doing this despite the fact. I mean, it's the old. I'm going to misquote her. May she rest in peace, Carrie Fisher.
Mm.
Um, be afraid, but do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that aspect of being a performer and an introvert that I don't think I recognized this as a child because I was an introverted child as well. But when I was performing, it was a moment when I knew I was in control.
Huge aspect of it. Yeah.
If I'm in a conversation or if I'm at a party or whatever, if I'm around a group of people and I am not performing, I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know how to interact with them. There's so many things that I don't know. But as soon as I'm performing, I am in control of this situation.
I hate parties. I love interacting with people. I like going for dinner with a group of friends. I like that sort of thing. But a
Mm.
party to me is just a nightmare of terrifyingism. And I very early on, I can't remember. There's a million names for it, but the quiet exit where you just disappear
Yeah.
and don't say goodbye to the host and don't say goodbye to anybody, and you're just gone. Um, I've done that my whole life, and I know
Yeah.
friendships have suffered because of it. And yet now I'm able to say, being at a party, I don't know how to interact with somebody for
Mm.
5 seconds over the cheese dip. You know,
Yes. Yes.
I can't do that, and it's not enjoyable for me, and I don't think it's pleasant for
Mm.
them. So
No.
please just let me go home and call me and let's go for coffee.
Yeah, I have this thing. So there's many names for it. I think a lot of people know it as the Irish goodbye. I've become quite the proponent of the Irish
Bill,
goodbye. And what I do, my
Philippe.
trick at showing up at a party, first off, to get myself in the door, I have to promise like 15 minutes.
Sorry,
Like
you cut out there for a second. I lost
I
you for a
promise
minute.
myself that I will stay for 15 minutes. That's my like. If
Oh,
you could just stay for
cool.
15 minutes, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I go to my host and
yeah.
I say, hello, I don't know how long I can stay. There's a thing. And
Great.
then when I'm done, when
Yeah.
I've reached the end of my tolerance, I just go. I don't say goodbye to anybody. I grab my coat and I go.
Right.
And usually they don't notice that I did that. And if they did, they're like, well, he did say that he had to go early.
Right. Do, can I just ask you though,
Yeah.
how wonderful that first breath of fresh air is when you step out on the street
Oh my God,
after?
it's so wonderful. It's
It's
so
gorgeous.
wonderful when like when you've hit your tolerance level, like your that limit for like being in that room, and you go
Yeah.
outside, you're in the elevator, you're in the stairwell, and you go outside and the air hits you and you're like, yeah, that's
Oh, it's the deepest breath, and it
it.
just tastes so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's no reflection on the people at the party and the fun they're
No,
having. Not at
no.
all. No. No. It's
Has your introvert, because I mean, for me, I remember when I first graduated from theater back in when I graduated from theater school. I I I
I love
remember
you for that. That's very
getting it in my head that like going to like industry parties and schmoozing was an important thing. And I realized very, very quickly that I, number one, hated it, and number two, I was no good at it. Um, but there's always an event where there's some kind of party or something like that, and you have to go to it, especially if you're in the show. How
right.
do you have you dealt with those sort of like industry obligatory parties that we all have to go to at some point?
First of all, in general, I have not gone, and I know my career has suffered because of it.
Hmm.
I don't know what other people are thinking. I have suppositions, ideas, but I know people who went to all the industry parties and went to all the stuff. And I know for some of them it did make their careers better, and for some it
Hmm.
didn't. But I have a feeling that just my not doing that kind of stuff did
Hmm.
affect me.
Yeah.
Um, However, sorry, flip side of that, um, when it's something like if I'm doing a show at a theater and there is a donor event and I am there to schmooze and direct the person to the donors to cinch the deal, if I have a
Mhm.
task, that I can
Yes.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I can do. But just to be seen and talk to the people and say hello and all that, it I'm no good at it. It scares the crap out of me. Um, I'm less afraid now if I'm interested in working with somebody, I'll just call them or I'll email or I'll go say hi.
Yeah.
That's a different thing, but going to an event to make a connection just never going to happen.
Yeah. No, I used to have a thing, and it was so hard for me talking to the people. Like, you do a show and you're just trying to get out, right? You're like, okay, I just want to go home. And you walk out, and there's people who want a moment of your time, and they want to talk to you, they want to tell you how good you are, or whatever it is. And I used to be like literal deer in the headlights. Like, people would be there, be like, and I would be so awkward and weird, and I would just be like, I need to get out of here. And just sort of like bolt, like the gazelle is running from the lions or whatever. And it was just like this weird thing. And then I came to the realization that that's still part of the job, is dealing with the people to some extent. And so I taught myself, it's like I practiced how to say thank you and make it sound sincere. And now I just do it, but I say the same thing. But at least I'm not like deer in the headlights. I can like look them in the eye and say thank you, and it's a little bit less awkward than it once was.
I a similar journey, except I always loved it because I was so in desperate need of approval and attention
Mm,
that for me it was just okay, this is why I'm doing this, and this is an affirmation I desperately need. That has changed, and I don't
mm,
need that anymore. Um, and for me, it changed to yes, it is part of the job, but it's also part of education. I don't
mm,
always tell people what they want to hear at the stage door.
mm,
Like I will
mm,
tell them how hard it is and what's involved and whatever sort of, letting them behind the curtain, whatever. But my whole relationship with acting has changed that way. That
mm,
for so long it was about the work, but also that the work had a carrot at the end of it.
mm,
Now that carrot is entirely different. It's not about approval.
Hmm.
Um, applause is nice, but it's not about the applause.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, my whole relationship with work and how I want to do it is entirely different.
How did that process happen? Is it a disillusionment, or is it just a maturity that came from doing it for as long as you've done it?
Um, I mean the resulting lack of intensity about it all has felt like disillusionment, but it's taken me a long time to process that actually it is simply a maturing. I think if I'm going to work now, it's going to be on something that I want to spend that kind of time on for its own sake. Um, but but yeah, I don't have the same passion for
Hmm.
the craft or and certainly not for the lately I've been in a couple of like not recently lately, but in the last few years. Um, remember when we used to do this full time? Yeah. Um, uh, remember when I was in a couple of rehearsal periods where you're in rehearsals and the work is great, and then you're in the green room chatting between scenes or whatever, and everybody's talking about who's doing what in the industry and who's got auditions happening and have you seen that and is this happening and
Hmm.
did you get your photo into so and so and whatever. And my just it just makes me want to barf. I don't know what it is. There's something for me that is just so aggressively toxic about the schmooze and the
Yeah.
and the desperateness. Am I current? Am I doing it? It's just like I don't want that anymore. I don't
Yeah.
want that to be, you know, it's just not worth it.
It's certainly very like I was just as you were describing it, I was like, well, that's part of the toxic aspect of the industry.
Oh yeah.
That's man, that's just one of those things that like to me, I think I never sure if that's part of the introverted part of me, but I always like that's gross. I don't like that. But it is part of that fear based toxicity that sort of like underlies a lot of the industry, which is one of those things that I wish we could address and come to terms with, because I do think it's one of the things that erodes people's passion in the industry and erodes
Yeah.
their desire to be a part of it.
But I think it's going to take a lot of personal reflection and self-regulation. English. It's going to take a lot of personal reflection and self-regulation on the part of actors in terms of why am I doing this work? What
Mhm.
what what is feeding me in this process?
Right.
So many of us get all of our sense of self from what we do.
Hmm.
And I'm always shocked to ask an actor, so what's your hobby? And they're like, I love to read plays and I love to. No, 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 that's your
Hmm.
job.
Yeah.
What is your hobby? Do you knit? Do you go fly fishing? Do you hike? You know, are you using public space for gardening? Do you, or if you read, is it secretly all science? Or are you taking a
Hmm.
course in a new language? Where is your life outside of what we do?
Hmm.
And 90% of actors don't have one.
Right.
They're working at getting work and then they're doing the work and they're working. And part of it is the nature of the industry.
Yeah.
But at the other point, it's like when the lights are off and this whole pandemic shutdown has forced a lot of people to reflect, myself included, on why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And is it healthy for me to do this? And what is my life if I'm not acting?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I, I recently I'm looking at offering some courses and just coachings and stuff and a couple of workshops, but putting it out there, putting out a just a little survey monkey quiz of what people want to study or how are they feeling, and anxious came back as the first thing,
Hmm.
and isolated and
Yeah.
lost and confused. These very deep emotions of that to me say somebody's sitting at home, and if they're not going to auditions and or they're not working, they're not sure who they are.
Yeah. Hmm. I was thinking, like, just around, the time that theaters had been shut down for a couple of months. A lot of people that I knew in the industry, who were the kind of people, they were just going constantly. Like, you saw them at everything,
Oh yeah,
every kind of event, every kind of networking, every kind of everything. There they were,
those bastards. Yes, no, I love them.
and they were always working at something.
Right.
But again, much like you were saying, like, now they were in a forced situation to try to contend with, like, so who am I when I'm not doing those sorts of things? And how
Yeah,
important is self-care? How important is it that I have something outside of this? And I do hope that's a lesson that people take away from this pause in theater, that these are important things for us to have, is hobbies and and a life outside of this industry.
totally. And I mean, even so many actors look at my fitness regime as part of my self care. Well, if
Mm,
you're only doing a fitness regime so that you're fit for auditions for whatever you're trying to sell, and now you're just working out to, are you actually doing it for yourself, for care of
mm-hmm,
self?
mm-hmm.
Or is this again part of this? I have to make myself better so that I'm employable, and I'm like, it's a very fine line between an action that is self care and an action that is actually, you don't have a good relationship with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you still studying pastoral studies?
I am. It is a Master of Pastoral Studies, which sounds a bit deceptive. I'm not going to be a pastor. That's not my calling.
Personally, I
Um,
just have to say, that might be a loss, but go ahead.
I part of me thinks I could be good at it, but the other part of it is there's too many books involved that are full of stuff that I'm not sure I feel about. It's a program that involves uh, psychotherapy training, which has a big multicultural aspect to it, as in you can offer presence to anyone, wherever they come from, whatever their experience. And there is actually, um, oh, what do you call it? There's a medical word for it when you do a study, and it's clinically, shows empirically shows that
Hmm.
people seeking mental health care, if they have some kind of belief system which is not in fact harming them but is actually healthy for them, involving that in their care can help them recover faster.
Hmm.
So there is a multi-faith spiritual care emphasis in this as well. So yeah, and a lot of my interest is someday I want to write a book. Why we
Hmm.
perform? Why
Yeah.
do we do this to ourselves?
Hmm.
Um, and I don't only want to offer presents for just actors, but I think there is something unique I could offer in that respect, because, and I'm bringing it into my classes and workshops, where what is your relationship with yourself
Hmm.
before you enter an audition? Or I often ask student actors, I go, what do you want from the audition?
Hmm.
And they say, I want to show my skill set. I want them to see my talent. I want them to like me. I
Hmm.
want to get the part. None of those are things we have any control over in an audition.
Yeah.
So getting them to go, you're going in there and I want to give 110%. Well, if you wake up in the morning and you're 40% of
Hmm.
yourself, and you go in and try to give 110% of yourself, you're going to look psychotic.
Hmm.
So, how do you go in and give the best 45% of yourself? You'll do better work. And how do you do the work so that when you leave the audition, you go, I did what I wanted. I went in, I told the story, I hit the moment of change, I accomplished my monologue. A,
Hmm.
your work will be better and they will see it. So your talent will be evident, your skill will be evident. You will have a task that isn't obsessively tied into them. And you'll be able to leave that room going, well, I'd love to get the part, but I at least did what I went in there to accomplish. That was
Hmm.
actually an accomplishable task.
That sort of leans
So
into that less toxic thing, like just to think about the things that you can control in the audition,
so
and what do you
many of
want
us,
from it?
yeah,
Yeah.
we go in there going, basically we're screaming, "Mommy, mommy, like me, hug me,"
Mm.
and "Daddy, give me a reward, give me the prize." And it's like that's
Yeah.
not a really healthy attitude to your work and yourself, mostly for
No.
yourself.
I have
And
this
I say this
theory of
just simply because I've beaten the
yeah,
crap out of myself for so
yeah.
many years over it.
Oh,
Sorry,
oh,
you've got a theory. What?
I think we all have. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking for a while about, like, how to have a non-toxic rehearsal room, and um, first, that starts with the director. Obviously, that's a big part of it. It
Totally.
starts with that. But like the idea of discussing is similar to, like, what do you want from the audition? Like having, like, the everybody talk about what they need from this production. What do they need from rehearsals? What do they need from the production as a whole?
Yeah.
Talking about, like, if somebody is like, I'm an introvert, I love you guys, I can't go out after the show. Occasionally, maybe I will, but I'm not going to any big drinking nights. Or to somebody who has anxiety, being able to comfortably admit to their anxiety and say, this is what I need from you guys if I have a bout of
Totally.
anxiety, and to create a room that everybody has been able to voice what they need, and that'll bring everybody closer together, and we can take care of each other a little more.
And to acknowledge what we can't accomplish in the rehearsal room.
Yeah.
You have that need. We can't provide that.
Hmm.
We can help you find an access to it elsewhere, but also that's a personal, that's a self-regulation thing.
Mm.
That's a something you're going to have to deal with alone. We're all here as friends to support you through that.
Yeah.
But 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 also, what is our relationship to the work? Is it,
Yeah.
so many actors are about, I need to feel the emotions, or so many actors still work separately in bubbles.
Yeah.
I worked at a famous theater festival where people would come in at the beginning of rehearsal having prepared their role, and they were ready to present their role of Madam X because they
Mm.
had rehearsed it and prepared it, and there was nothing transpired in the room at all.
Mm.
What
Yeah.
are we doing in the scene? What are we trying to get from
Yeah.
what happens in the scene? What has to happen that has nothing to do with how I feel as an actor? Like, character X enters the scene for a reason so that Y can happen and we can move
Mm.
on to the next scene.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with how you feel as an actor. We have to accomplish that task.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember being in theater school, and one of the very early lessons that wasn't directed at me, but it was like, it sort of, I think it hit a bunch of people in my class like a ton of bricks, was somebody was like, I'm just not feeling the emotion in this scene. And the director or teacher said, well, it doesn't really matter if you're feeling it.
Exactly. That I didn't get for decades.
Yeah.
That I didn't get. And then finally I went, no, it doesn't matter what you're feeling. It's what
Mm.
the audience is going to feel from what they see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and great if you can feel along, but you're going to do that to yourself 8 times a week. What kind of self-care is that?
That's the thing, is like, I was talking with an intimacy director a while back. We were talking about how, your body doesn't know that the emotions are made up.
Oh, wow. Totally. I'm going to use that. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
So every time you fall in love on stage, this is why we have this thing we don't talk about in theater, bleed, as our emotions, the
Yes.
theater bleeds into the real life and all that sort of stuff. It's why showmances happen, that, like, our body doesn't know the difference. Our body doesn't know that this is acting. It
No.
just reacts to it. And so we need to find ways to enter the rehearsal, but also to exit the rehearsal and do something with these things that we've dredged up and felt. And because otherwise our body is just going to go with, like, oh, this is what I'm feeling now.
I fell into that by accident. I was doing a production of Cabaret, playing the MC, which is not what I would usually be cast as. And it was a great chance to just screw with the audience's mind. They're expecting Joel Grey or Alan
Hmm.
Cumming, and out comes this large beast. And they're like, I had so many people come up after and go, "Oh, you came on stage and you were so fat, we thought you were going to be awful, but you were really good." Oh,
Oh,
God bless him. But doing the show was so hard. One day before the show, I thought, oh, I'm a little late. I'm going to have a shower just to freshen up. Did that, did the show, came off stage and went, oh, I kind of want to wash the show off. And I had a shower afterwards. And then it became a ritual of literally washing myself of my life to get into the show, and then washing myself of the show so I could go back into my life. And I don't think we implement that practice enough. There's that,
no.
I see kids running out of a Broadway theater going, yeah, we're off to the bar, we're having a good time, blah, 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 or I'm off to this or that and the other. And it's like, do you want to just take a second and go, we all just got hit by a bus. Let's
Yeah.
just stop, breathe. Now go have a great time. But
Yeah.
but define the boundaries between yourself and the work.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that can start in rehearsal. If you can like do that, some kind of thing like that in rehearsal, maybe people take that into the performance as well. But I think also you can encourage it, but you can't make people do it.
no, you can't make people do it.
Yeah.
But I know we did. I was rehearsing for another piece, and we had an Indigenous director, and we did at the start of the day. We smudged at the start of the day to just say what we're thankful for, and also to wash off the world before we entered the work. We didn't have. I don't think we had a closing of day process, but it's without appropriating the Indigenous practice, it's something I thought again I would love to use as a director to just go. We're stepping into the space, particularly if it's a challenging piece, to
Yeah.
step into the space and have it be a little sacred, a little special, or just acknowledge that it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Bruce,
the reason
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just like because
No.
we're almost at the hour. I don't want to keep you
No,
more
we're good.
than
No,
more
we're
than
good.
the hour. So I wanted to thank you for this time, and it's been a delight talking with you.
Oh, it's been a delight talking with you too.